Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Craig Swanson. And Craig, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out. And since you are head of the EO Accelerator program in Seattle, I've had some amazing EO members on my podcast with Anthony Standifer, EO Chicago, and he's a company emceed, and he does manufacturing for companies in the beauty and personal care space. Becky Galvez, CEO of Candor Threads, which is a custom apparel company, also in EO Chicago. And Matt Zolk is a EO Tulsa and does acquisition and management of single and multifamily residential properties. Fascinating interviews. And of course, my business partner, John Corcoran, EO San Francisco. We have too many episodes together where we're talking about various topics, but check all those episodes out. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually are an easy button for you to launch and run your podcast. We do strategy, accountability, and full execution of a podcast. And Craig, for me, and I know you're the same way, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. You have questions, go to rise25.com. Happy to answer them. And without further ado, we have Craig Swanson. He's co-founder of the online learning platform CreativeLive. I remember watching and listening and seeing the tremendous growth, Craig, early on of CreativeLive. And it was really innovative. It still is. Amazing platform that you co-founded. And Craig is also the secret weapon for businesses. And he has helped online businesses such as KaisaFit, Superrise Education, the Wedding School, and many more by helping them grow to multi-million-dollar mark and even acquisition sometimes. And basically, we were talking, you are, some people call themselves a serial entrepreneur. You call yourself a serial business partner, because basically you partner with online businesses. Sometimes they're in the low six figures, and help them grow, break the $1 million mark and beyond, and build a team and systems to scale far beyond that. And people can check you out at craigswanson.org. So Craig, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, that was fantastic. I've got to start taking notes here. You just summed up my business better than I do.
I love to talk about the early days, when you first started CreativeLive and how that went about.
So CreativeLive actually started out before it was CreativeLive. It was a project inside of my IT company that was a gift I gave to myself. The IT company was profitable enough that I could spend a couple $100,000 or $100,000 a year on kind of a side education gig. And then around 2008, when the economy tanked, the repercussions of that were I had to either give up this gift I'd give myself or find some way of making it sustainable. And that grew into what became CreativeLive in 2010, which was this live broadcast of basically an in-person learning experience. That was really the thing that we were playing with. Is there were some online education at that time, very, very limited in 2010. And there's a lot of in-person workshops, but you never had the feeling of an in-person workshop when you were online. It was always just like a box people were in. And so what we did is we said, hey, what if we basically got 5 or 6 students together and we got the whole camera crew and basically filmed it as if it's a reality TV show. And we did a live broadcast of a in-person learning experience where the people watching from around the world got a seat at that table, but they also got to watch 6 or 7 other people actively participating in this. And we started off by doing 3-day photography workshops, which would just be an unheard of concept for doing online education. And effectively, it was like this connection of online education, kind of like reality TV show production, and the very early days of internet live streaming. And it all came together into this really amazing package that's just really exploded.
I'm wondering, how do you choose topics? I know early on, I think when I was researching this, you said that you were using, online webinar platforms, and some
Mhm.
of them had, the limit of 1,000. You're like, we're never going to hit this,
Yeah.
and you decided to start with Photoshop, and you hit that maximum, and
Mhm.
obviously you hit something there with what people wanted. Can you talk about the evolution of some of the topics that you went through with Creative Live, and how do you even choose the next topic? Because you're putting a lot of production value and a lot of time and energy in each one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the name actually sums up a lot of it. Creative Live was started around supporting um, creative entrepreneurs or creative professionals. So graphic designers, illustrators, photographers, video production houses, those types of companies were people we were really working with. And why pick that? Part of that is what I did professionally. I professionally was an IT company focused on Seattle area ad agencies, design firms, photography studios. So it was an industry I knew really well. My partner Chase Jarvis was a client of mine in Seattle and was a tremendously well-known photographer. We had built a list of about 30,000 creative companies around the world through some writing that I had done previously, and so it was a natural outgrowth of the type of education that we were already doing. And it was what we were teaching in the classroom inside of my IT company that we had started.
Obviously, now, I
Mhm.
mean, you only take on, maybe one or two partners a
Mhm.
year, right? Because you're
Mhm.
working really hand in hand with these people,
Yeah.
and you're really integrated into their business, right? And so I'm curious from the standpoint of you've learned a lot through Creative Live. So what are some of the
Mhm.
things that you did? I mean, you bring this growth to these businesses. What did you
Mhm.
see that was working Creative Live that you're taking to some of these businesses that you're partnering with?
So, it's actually really kind of interesting. I realized that we just launched yesterday with a fitness studio, and the person that I brought in to help build out was my first employee at Creative Live years ago. So about 12 years, we effectively were doing yesterday very similar to what we had done 12 years earlier, just with completely different technology. So the technology has completely changed. The ease of use has completely changed in terms of doing live streaming, but the underlying business hasn't changed that much. Um, in order to grow, in order to become something that is significant, is really important to create a community, a learning experience for a community, and to really focus on the learners. And I will say one of the big things that early on we were seeing in 2010 is a lot of online learning was focused around putting the educators on a pedestal. Basically, and if you look at Masterclass and some of the other, they pick people and they basically just really put the educators on a pedestal. And the idea is that you're giving access to these amazing people to the world. And there's a grain of truth in that, but I always viewed it the other way around. Is I wanted to put the audience on a pedestal. I always basically wanted to be an advocate to make the most important person in the room was the person who was tuning in from their house, wherever it happened to be, unable to get access to this without anything else. And when you have that focus of making sure that you're putting the customer, the person that's on the other end of that communication, on a pedestal, it means that we put a lot of work into things that didn't make the filming feel more comfortable. That didn't make it more comfortable for us in the studio, but we were working on trying to break the boundary so the person watching at home felt less alone and felt heard.
I'm curious,
Mhm.
Craig, you
Mhm.
mentioned Masterclass, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you were the early on Masterclass,
Yeah.
essentially, and all
Mhm.
the other ones that came after you are
Mhm.
probably followed in your footsteps and looked at what
Mhm.
you did. I'm wondering, when you look at Masterclass, what do you
Mhm.
see them doing really well, and what do you see that may look at improving? Even, I mean, if people haven't heard of Masterclass, if you want to learn
Mhm.
basketball, they have things on, with Steph Curry. If you learn tennis, Serena Williams. I mean, they have the ultimate people in that industry teaching some of these particular skills, and it's pretty cool just the people that they've had on. So I'm curious from your standpoint, been doing it for so many years, what do they do well, and what do you think they should maybe look at improving?
Well, first of all, I would never I mean, I believe that they have exactly the business that they want to have, and they are absolutely killing it in terms of what they are creating. When
Yeah,
I
it's
look at
amazing.
when I look at Masterclass, at some point I realized when we were building CreativeLive that a lot of us were talking about the reinvention of online education, and I really realized in a lot of ways what was happening is we were also hitting this reinvention of what TV was. And I see Masterclass as a lot of that, because when we were competing with these large classes for Creative Life for time, we were not necessarily competing with colleges. We were competing with Netflix. And it was a matter of creating what I was calling bingeable education where people could watch and absorb and really get something, where they could get a lot more out of the hours that they put into that than necessarily watching on Netflix. And I would say Masterclass is an extraordinary example of that. Their production values are tremendous. Um, and also, and there are times where you look at the topics and you realize it really is a little bit more like a interpersonal documentary or conversation with someone more than education. I think one of the masterclass topics I thought was really fascinating is how to be an astronaut. By I don't know which astronaut taught it, but it is a great example of something that you don't really take a class online to learn to do these things. There's a lot of masterclass courses that are not actually providing what the box says they are providing. It is providing a
Yeah.
educational consumption that a lot of us really love to basically just improve ourselves intellectually, while maybe not being actionable in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I want my money back. I watched the How to Be an Astronaut. I wasn't able
Mhm.
to do that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you have any other favorites on either Creative Live or Masterclass? Favorite
Um,
all-time classes?
Well, I mean, in terms of me, in terms of my taste, Brene Brown is one of my favorite educators, which is a lot more interpersonal, a lot more deep self-worth work about basically how we show up in the world. Um, but Masterclass, a lot of the cooking classes I think are really extraordinary. They've got some really amazing ones, and then personally, for my taste, um, I love the ones that are with the directors. I think we've had a whole series of directors basically talking about what it is to do filmmaking, and there are a lot of pearls of wisdom, not just in terms of video production, but also in terms of leadership, in terms of like getting things out of talent that makes sense.
What were some of the fan favorites on Creative Live?
So we had a huge amount in photography. So I would say in terms of fan favorites, Creative Life really broke down into photography. So if you're in photography, you were probably watching Stu Bryce, you were watching Vincent LaFerre, Zach Arias. And then we had an entire business division that came in with Tim Ferriss. And so you either lead with Stu Bryce or Tim Ferriss in terms of what you love on Creative Live, and then it branches out from there.
Talk about Sue Bryce. You worked with
Hmm.
Sue Bryce Education.
Hmm.
What'd you do?
I met Sue when I was recruiting her for Creative Live years ago, in 2012. I think her first course was, and um, she she basically taught us at Creative Live what was possible in a course. We had all of our metrics and standards that we thought a an extraordinary course was, and she broke all of them. Um,
This is her,
just
right?
that's
Yeah.
the
If you're
portrait system
watching the
supervised
video,
education.
yeah, if you're watching the video and if you're on the audio, we are showing a screen share and we can see the portraitsystem.com here.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So at Creative Live, we did live 3-day courses that anyone could watch for free. And so what ended up happening is people would watch it, they'd see exactly what's being taught, and then a portion of that large audience that was watching would want to be able to have that course for themselves to rewatch or be able to do anything they want with. And so they would purchase it. And a good class at Creative Live had a conversion of like 1 to 2%. If we did above 1 to 2%, we were okay.
So they can
That was
watch
kind
it
of the threshold.
free.
Hmm.
If they like it, they purchase it so they can watch it forever.
Exactly. And you also have to keep in mind these were 3-day courses. So it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You could
Right.
also look at it as you can have it for free, or you can buy your weekend back for $99. And then you can watch on your own schedule. So Sue converted at 8%. And what that basically meant was she didn't come in with a large audience. She didn't come in with a topic that even people were necessarily hungry with, but Sue was someone where when you start listening to Sue, you realize you cannot have enough of what she is sharing. And there is nobody I've worked with that has created that energy more than Sue. Uh, and she, after about 4 years building exclusively on CreativeLive, started her own education company, her own education platform in 2015. Sue Bryce, it wasn't Sue Bryce Education at that time. It was just in bed with Sue Bryce. It was Sue Bryce. And around that time, we'd had some transitions in terms of CreativeLive, in terms of leadership, and I was transitioning out. And in 2016, I joined Sue Bryce in her company, along with George and Aaron, who had been part of my team at CreativeLive previously, and we spent the next 5 years building Sue Bryce Education into what it is now, which is pretty amazing.
Wow. That is amazing. Can you talk a little bit about conversions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The factors of conversions. And, you mentioned obviously there's a factor of a personality, right? A compelling personality. And Sue had that. What were some other factors that help with conversions?
So let's just start with the basics. Ultimately, and this is for online education, but this is for anything. Online, people make choices for what they are purchasing based on their needs, not based on the instructor's needs or the company's needs or anything else. And so, I mean, I think Sue has a really soothing voice. She's really easy to listen to. But ultimately, the most compelling thing about Sue is the audience that was attracted to her and the audience that she spoke to. She knew intimately, and she knew intimately the pains that they were experiencing, because it were pains that Sue had worked through herself. And she connected with people on a more deep and visceral level in terms of the challenges that people face creating a creative business. And she spent probably more time digging into an understanding of what kept people from moving forward in that area, rather than spending her time trying to tell everybody how great it was going to be and how much she had personally accomplished. In terms of online education or different things like that, one thing to keep in mind is there's a sliding scale depending on what you're charging and who your audience is. One of the things, I always say for the book publishing industry, if authors got paid based on everybody who finished the last page on the last chapter, the publishing industry would look very different. At the price of books, for book readers of the the $12 to $25 to $50 range, there's a lot of people that are signaling their own value system to themselves in the books they're choosing even before they read them. And there's a lot of people that get value out of the books that they choose, where they maybe only consume a small portion of those books, where they'll go to the chapter that they want or they go to the section they want. I always use books as an example because somehow online content creators somehow feel like their mark of success is when someone consumes 100% of their content. And so some content creators will create courses in which they think their only value is for something where everybody in the audience experiences every single piece that is in that course, which in my mind is a very instructor focused mindset, as opposed to understanding that different people get different values out of things at different stages, and allowing people to pick the value they want out of what they're purchasing, and not prescribing the value that is necessary. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
no, I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago, and they bought, a multi-$100 course, and we were discussing, and they said the page, whatever the sales page was, like, whatever it was, 10 pages long. And they said they bought the course for one bullet on one of the pages. Like the rest of it, whatever, they bought it for one bullet on one of those 10 pages, to your point.
Absolutely. And hopefully they got what they wanted out of it. And I think there's a lot of people that just feel like everyone needs to read all of the fluff and all the video production, where I think there's a huge benefit in concise organization of what you want to deliver, and an understanding that people come in for their own needs, and let's help people find their needs, as opposed to putting them on an educational track that they must not deviate from.
So you were mentioning from a conversion standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
online education and pricing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think, how should people think about pricing their course or products?
For me, I think in the range of, let's say, $199 down to $20. So in this sub $200 range, and probably somewhere in the $37 to $90 range, there's this under $200 range. Conversion is driven almost entirely by the needs of the audience. And generally, that is a price point that is not going to put someone at risk. And generally, people are going to make purchases in that range based on what they need, not based on the length of the product or based on anything else. So I have seen people, for example, I have sold for KaisaFit, we sold a 15-minute mobility course. It was our number one selling course that we really ever did. We sold probably about $60,000 or 60,000 units of this 15-minute video. None of us thought it was going to sell. It was an experiment. And
it's a good experiment.
It was a great experiment, and it got extraordinary reviews. And that 15 minutes was incredibly valuable to the audience. And I think we sold it at $29, something like that. And it was an incredibly productive product. And before that, there was a time where I thought I had to have 8 hours worth of content and everything I sold. So there was a time where I thought that there was this sliding scale where it's the number of hours of content on a sliding scale between X dollar and Y dollar, and that's what matters. And in the under $200 range, almost none of that matters, in my opinion. Now, it is all about the needs of the audience members, and they can serve those needs with one bullet point, as you're saying. Like if they're and I'm just there's an integrity piece for me that I'm a huge believer in, putting in a guarantee and putting in the ability to, like, honor things if you didn't live up to what you promised to a client. But people get so caught up in the instructor's idea of what they need to deliver that we get lost in terms of not listening to what the clients and the audience wants. That's the under $200 range. And that's in part because hopefully people that are spending that amount of money are not putting themselves at personal risk. And then there is the more expensive courses, in the $2,000, the $2,000 up to $10,000 courses. There's generally a sense of risk and commitment that is different from inexpensive courses. And it's a completely different psychology, and it's a completely different mindset for the instructor. And probably it's not an ethical, there's not a lot of integrity of going in there assuming that people are not going to be consuming those. There is less of a opportunity to say, hey, only 10% of the audience actually complete something like this. There's probably a greater commitment to those people. And for that, I think that it's really important to build out your expertise and be able to basically deliver what you are doing, and basically building that out. So I have purchased a number of expensive courses. I purchased a $4,000 Facebook advertising course that I gave to one of my employees and that I audited with them, which I thought was fantastic. I have purchased $12,000 programs, masterminds around building things. So I have invested in some of these types of things. And there's a very different mindset going into that. It is much more of a risk to me personally. It's much more of a risk both in terms of time and money and everything else. And so it's a very different sales process. And the one thing I will say is, a lot of people, I think there's a lot of trainers out there that are just teaching people how to create online courses. And a lot of people are just copying and pasting a sales strategy that ends up being mismatched with whatever content they're creating or what the need that they're serving in the marketplace is.
Thanks for that. That was hugely instructive. I love how you think about that. I love to hear, and I want to talk about KaisaFit in a second, but Just in general, who are I know you're always partnering with people in the
Mhm,
future, and
mhm,
you really have a limited capacity to partner with
mhm.
people.
Yeah.
Who is an ideal partner? What does the criteria look like for you?
So give a little bit of background. So I effectively work as a back end business partner to generally one person at a time, or I come into a new relationship about once a year to basically help someone build out their business. And that process is usually a 3 to 6 year process of basically helping them build out this business, create product market fit, create something that can scale, build out a team that can run it to the next level. And so generally the type of person I partner with is they are they are a visionary. They're a really strong visionary, and they're often very mission driven. They are a very strong expert in their field, whether it's Stu Bryce, who is an absolute master of photography and a master of portrait photography in specific, or KaisaFit, who is a master coach and has been working with helping getting people moving for her entire life. Or other, I've worked with hairdressers, I've worked with these different people. They're basically masters of their industry, and they have a fairly significant audience that they already know how to speak to. So they're speaking to over 250,000 people in some fashion, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, some some form of communication. And they have created and sold some form of digital product before. So generally, I would say they've sold somewhere around $100,000 of digital product in the last couple of years. And that's kind of a key number because it's a relatively small number, sales wise, for the type of person that we're talking about. Because the partners that I'm really good at are where they themselves are running into issues that they can't get around, that are keeping them from being able to go to the next level. They have the audience, they have the knowledge, they have the mission, they have all these pieces, but they may not have the business acumen yet. They may not be able to run a team yet. They may have, very often, there's a little bit of ADHD or a little bit of over creativity that they don't know how to control or funnel into something that they can get completed. And I basically come into a relationship as the integrator, the executor, the back end business partner that basically helps build out a business platform with them and for them that allows them to shine and allows them to basically serve this market to the size that they're capable.
Craig, I've talked to people personally
Hmm.
who have also heard that, someone's got hundreds of thousands of followers, even
Hmm.
million followers or
Hmm.
millions of followers, and they haven't been able to monetize it. Right. And so what you're saying is that person may not be a fit because they haven't sold any courses at all. But I mean, we hear this all the time. Um, Someone has millions of followers, but they aren't able to monetize what they're doing. Do you find that to be common?
I guess it depends a little bit on why they have followers and why they've been unable to monetize. So I will say for myself, I definitely come from an educational or coaching or digital product mindset. So if someone has hundreds of thousands of followers because they are doing something that is around them, their fashion, their style, their lifestyle, but they don't really have either a desire or an area to be able to share expertise or share education. There's probably not a fit for me just because they are playing a different game. They're probably playing more of a brand game. And hopefully, if they're playing at that level, maybe they haven't sold any digital goods for themselves, but they've hopefully got some brand relationships. Maybe they've launched some products. Like there's a lot of other ways to monetize an audience like that. My area of monetization is around that mix of really extraordinary education combined with a mission driven to a specific audience that is already responding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
That makes sense. I think,
mhm,
who out there do you see, and do you do coaching or consulting? Can someone come to you and go, listen, I don't know, I want to pay you to consult with me? Maybe it's a fit to partner, maybe not. I don't know. Do you get any of those requests?
You know what? I smiled when you said, "Can I pay you?" Because honestly, that's the part that I don't do. Um, so I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of coaching. I actually lead the coaching program at EO Accelerator for Seattle, which is a coaching program for entrepreneurs in general that are trying to break $1 million. And I also just have a large network of creators that know they can call me and just book an hour with me to just talk out stuff. So I do a lot of coaching. Um,
You're very
one of the
generous.
one of the things I don't do is I don't have a mechanism right now where I charge for consulting or coaching, and don't really have a place for it.
Yeah.
Part of that is a block on my own part. Um, Part of what got me into creating digital goods is I had an IT company. I was a service-based company back in 2000, and until 2010, I made a really hard mental break between trading my time for money, starting around 2000, and creating this boundary between 2000 and 2010, where I don't trade my time for money in really any fashion whatsoever. Um, what I do is I invest my time in people and relationships and building stuff and platforms. And I get paid by the stuff and platforms that I help build and create. But nowhere in my life do I trade an amount of money for an amount of time.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to do it.
Yeah. I was
Mhm.
just asking because if someone's
Yeah.
listening to this and they contact you, I want to make sure that your time is respected, and whatever you
Yeah.
donate it to charity or whatever. It's not like you said,
Yeah.
it's about the relationship and the help, but it
Mhm.
truly means someone's serious in getting your advice and possibly working with you hopefully beyond that to see if that fits on both parties' sides.
I will say the big thing that's coming up a lot for me is I'm getting a lot of content creators that are calling, that have created their course, that they've poured their heart and soul into creating a course that they are not able to take to market. And I'm actually thinking right now there's probably about five that have some of the most beautiful production values I've ever seen. Um, and I don't know what to do with those people. I'm not saying that I
You
don't have any
need mini
skills in this
Craigs.
space.
You need mini Craigs.
Well, the thing is, Craig, I don't actually know how to get the first 100 customers. I don't know how to get. So what I know how to do is I know how to watch somebody that can get the first 100 customers, and I can build matching systems and systems at scale on the march from the first 100 customers to the first 1,000 customers. And in that march from the first 100 customers to the first 1,000 customers, I basically build learning systems to master the sales and scaling process so that we can go from the first 1,000 customers to the next 100,000 customers. That's what I am extraordinary at. What I don't know is I don't know how to get the first 100 customers.
Hmm. Who out there do you see in the universe? Maybe it's on
Mhm.
social media or whatever that
Mhm.
you think they have a really cool brand. I really like their mission. It's someone that is in the realm that I should be working with. Who sticks out to you?
There are a couple. One of the tricky things here is most people that are playing on a big enough field that I am seeing them a lot of times have solved this in various ways. But there are a couple homeschooling communities that I have seen that have a
Hmm.
lot of engagement. Some of the topics I'm really interested in is food and cooking education, um, homeschooling, and I have a daughter with Down syndrome, so also I'm
Mhm.
particularly interested in potentially communities around homeschooling for parents with children with disabilities of some fashion. Um, and trying to think here,
Is there an
food
expert
education.
out there in that field? Like, who are the experts in homeschooling, especially with geared towards parents who have kids with disabilities? Is there an expert out there?
I don't have anyone off the top of my.
Hmm.
I don't have anyone like off the top of my head. There are some communities I have seen that are really engaged, but I don't have a person's name
Hmm.
off the top of my head.
So homeschooling, food,
Mhm.
what other?
Um, there's this whole other category of basically creative industries that people turn to for both personal development as well as building their next business. So um, years ago, there's a lot of people would turn to real estate agents early, like they become real estate agents at a certain phase because they had really strong relationship skills. Yoga studios, there's a lot of yoga instructors in there. Wedding photography really hit that niche where there are a lot of really talented photographers that come into wedding photography as the business that they can grow and start growing. Sue Bryce with portrait photography, a lot of personally creative, expressive outlets that women and men are attracted to, maybe mid career. So in their late 30s, early 40s, when they've got some skills under their belt from a previous job, looking at being able to branch out into a more of an entrepreneurial business that has a little more creative flair and a little more personal connection. That type of intersection of creativity and business development is what I love to create platforms to support.
Mm. Let's talk about KaisaFit and what you do with them. You mentioned them before. I'll pull it up here so we can take a look at it. What'd you do with KaisaFit?
So Kaisa is so I knew that I was really attracted to doing something in the fitness space. I was really attracted to doing something in the fitness space, and this was in early 2019. And I was working on some of my own personal health issues. And one of the things I was going through is I was exploring whether I had an eating disorder or my relationship with food. And while I was going through this, I was also really interested in fitness as a business model. But I was really bothered by the fact that I knew how to make money in fitness, which was to show a bunch of bodies with a before and after, and to basically make women specifically feel bad about the body they're in, promise a change, and have them drop money. So that is, if you're looking for a business model, I mean, like if all you care about is money, there's a business model that works every year forever.
Yeah, I think I see those ads all over Facebook and wherever else. Yeah.
So, and I've had friends that have done that. I mean, I know the business model. I did not want to do that. It didn't reflect the values I had, didn't reflect what I was working on with myself. I had a list of influencers and people I was interested in, and Kaisa, I'd known about Kaisa, and Kaisa is this incredibly badass fitness coach. She is like a tremendous fitness professional. But what got me is she gave a speech to other trainers about her personal mission, which was very much against tying movement and working out to weight loss and body shape change, and basically that movement is for improving our joy of life and our ability to show love to our bodies and like basically live in the body that we have, rather than trying to sell fitness as a punishment to be able to change the way we look. And when I heard that, I said, this is like, this value that she is expressing is really something I would love if she believes that, and if she wants to build that. I would be really excited about building something with her. And I had a friend that could introduce me to Kaisa. She had about 870,000 followers on Instagram at that point. And I had not taken him up on that introduction because I didn't feel like I was ready to have that conversation. I didn't feel like I had the economic argument. I didn't feel like I had the examples. I didn't have the business plan, everything else. I hadn't figured out how I could make a business that could really sing within this space, given what I want to do. And basically I said, hey, would you introduce me? And I had a conversation with her. Basically I said, if this is the value that you believe, like if these words that you said in this video are you, I don't know if you'd want me as a business partner, but I would really like to help you build something. And I think I was one of the first people that ever approached her that way. And honestly, the really crazy thing is, I didn't even know how badass she was. Like I came to her because of her mission and because of her stated purpose. And then I discovered how incredibly amazing she is, in terms of like her physical feats of strength and skill and everything. So I came in completely reversed from, I think, from everyone else that had been approaching her.
Yeah.
And
And if you're watching the video,
mhm.
you can see I'm scrolling through the
Yeah,
KaisaFit.com about page, and you can see
yeah,
obviously she's on the
mhm,
cover of Strong and American Fitness and Oxygen and all these
yeah,
magazines as
mhm,
well.
yeah, absolutely. Um, So yeah, and if you go back to if you like click on Just Move, the whole idea with Just Move, which is the platform that we built out, it is a fitness movement at home membership for people that um, want to get the feeling and basically want to feel better in their body and be flexible and enjoy life, and to take out all the conversation around body shape and weight loss and everything else that gets tied in to trying to change people's appearances, and just focus on being able to change the way people feel in their body and the health that they experience in living their life.
I'd love to hear some of the nuances in the beginning. And again, you're
Hmm.
partnering with
Hmm.
someone
Yeah.
and you are vetting them just as much as they're vetting you in this
Hmm.
process. So how does
Hmm.
that you start the conversation with KaisaFit?
Hmm.
How does it progress?
Well, it even ties back a little bit to what you were talking about earlier about, do I do my coaching? Effectively, all I do, I mean, I am helping people who have online content companies or want to build online content companies all the time. So the conversation will usually start somewhere in there, or it's a referral from someone I've helped in the past. I only go into business with maybe one new person a year, um, but that's because I'm often helping people and they don't need me as a business partner. And kind of what I'm looking for is I'm looking for I'm looking for a couple things in a business. I am looking first of all, I'm just looking at the business opportunity, because I love the challenge of getting a business to above $1 million in revenue, and then I want to find something that's big enough where we can march up to above $10 million a year in revenue. So there's this size and scope and opportunity that I'm kind of looking for. Um, and I'm looking for someone that has a vision and a mission that I can really get behind, because I am going to be helping them build a platform to make their voice stronger and broader. And it is their mission and their voice, but I need to be able to really buy into it and really believe that this is something that I want to make real in the world. Um, and then really the last piece is whether there's a fit for me, whether they have whether what they uniquely need is what I'm going to be bringing to the table, and it's this combination of things. Because I tell people if they can do this without me, they should do this without me. I mean, I'm only working with people for whom I am a really unique fit to make something possible. Um, One of the things, the most common thing is a lot of what I do, you can hire people to do. So you can hire people to do the back end site, the marketing, the IT, the web development, the video production. All this are hireable things. Um, but when you hire somebody, one of the dynamics in that relationship is, unless you are willing to give up so much control that they can override you, or that they are a stakeholder in the conversation, they basically have to serve at your pleasure. And ultimately, if you're paying them, they are working for the money that you're paying them. And they may suggest things, but ultimately, you're the one driving the boat. In the partnerships I'm in, really those people need an additional stakeholder. They need a business partner who is a stakeholder in the business that can negotiate and advocate as a stakeholder in the business. And in that case, um, rather than paying me, I am often bringing the money into the relationship. So it is definitely something for someone who is ready, who is looking for a partner. And there's a lot of conversation. A lot of times it'll be months of conversation before we get into something, along with some test runs, because most of this is building out trust and making sure that there's a right fit for everybody involved. And um, Yeah.
How do you recommend, Craig, like when you do
Mhm.
amplify this
Mhm.
voice for
Mhm.
people, the internet and social media can be a dangerous place where people make
Mhm.
comments and negative comments and negative
Mhm.
things. What are some of the, I don't know, examples, and how do people should people handle the scrutiny? Because now you're there's 100 people listening, now there's 1 million people listening, and someone's going to not like what you say. I don't care how nice or good it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, that is one of the things I'm also kind of getting a sense of is how ready someone is to play at that stage. Um, so I think one of the challenges is um, to be able to play at that stage. You have, I think, this works best when someone has such a strong mission and purpose for what they're sharing, and such a clear idea of who they're serving, that their own ego can be set aside to some degree. So so it becomes a little bit less about them and more about the mission and the people they're serving.
Got
Um,
it.
and I think it's also really, really important to have a support group around ourselves that know us, that have our best interests at heart, that hold us accountable and hold us to our own truths. Um, because ultimately, the thing with the internet is I can find any reinforcing opinion on the internet for any opinion that I want to hold. And so what ends up happening is one of two things happen, I think, when people end up getting a lot of feedback from the internet. One is they can be so overwhelmed that they just shut down. Um, or they can become they can become so aware that so many opinions exist at once that are contradictory that they ultimately have to decide to follow themselves. So um, I think there can be something freeing for being on the stage because a lot of times. So let's back out a second because a lot of times, and we'll just talk about someone who has a large following. Let's say that they're doing something. They create a large following. They're at 250,000 followers. A lot of times those people, unless they came up through a media organization or they came in from a professional place beforehand, most of the people I work with, that level of prominence is something that they got to somewhat unexpectedly. And um and they have a bunch of stories about themselves that around whether they're well educated or around whether they have this skill or that skill. Like they're like being public in this way creates a lot of opportunity for us to feed whatever self-fulfilling delusion we have about ourselves that we want to. Um, and there is this process of using that to learn about ourselves and become more clear on what's important to us. And then if you can get to a place where basically you can become truer to yourself in the process and try to find a way for your voice to be louder in what is true to me to a point that I'm willing to be wrong, that or no, that I'm willing to be wrong, I'm willing to be misunderstood. I think that people can release some of the energy that they're fighting with the internet. Because here's the thing, like I said, you can find whatever you want as feedback. And so you can tell yourself any story you want to tell yourself about yourself from what's happening out there on the internet. And you will have as much evidence as you need to make it true. The trick is to become clear on what's true for me, for us, for you, and to own it as much as possible, and to have people that are supporting you um, be people that you listen to, that you trust, that have your interests at heart. That I feel like I was rambling a little bit there, but it's really tough. I mean, it is it, but it's also I
I
think
mean, I get
life
what you're
changing.
saying. It's like if someone's kind of sticking to their
Mm-hmm.
ultimate mission and also not having a huge
Mm-hmm.
ego and not taking things personally, then you just try and serve as much as humanly possible.
You know what? Here's let me actually back up. I think I can say it a little bit simpler. I said people come in. If you look at people who have media experience before they became internet famous, they understand they have a different relationship with their image than someone that comes up more organically. Someone that is media trained knows that there is this caricature of themselves that they're putting out. They try to make that caricature as genuine to them as possible, maybe, but they understand that the thing that they're putting out is not them. It is a kind of this image or caricature of themselves that they're putting out. People who build an organic following out of something that feels really true may find at some point that they really resent the caricature of themselves that they have created in order to be an efficient marketer of their own image. And then they fight against wanting to be more than will fit into a social media relationship. And either they'll blow it up or they have to like go find another place to be able to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Craig, I have one last question.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for sharing your journey and your knowledge with me and everyone else. And people can learn more at craigswanson.org and on LinkedIn or whatever channels Craig's on. Since we were talking about online education and education in general, my question is some of your favorite, it could be your mentor, personal mentors or distant mentors, meaning books or resources that you love.
So if I go back to the very beginning, one of my favorite books, and I think actually it got rewritten and retitled, but a book that my dad gave me when I was just going out on my own as an IT consultant. It was a book by Jeffrey Bellman called The Consultant's Calling. And the subhead was Getting Things Done When You're Not the One in Charge. And there is so much about what I have created in my life that kind of harkens back to that, which is this idea of being a leader and being an influencer without doing it from a point of being the one in charge, without like leading people who don't have to follow you. And I think the skills and like the mindset that's come up out of that for me in my career, it's really like where I'm at a lot is is this whole idea of being a kind of a professional business partner, of being a partner, of basically being able to advocate without necessarily being able to tell people what they must do, but being able to help lead people who are leaders.
Love it. Any other favorite books?
Right now, I really love EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So the one book that I encourage everybody to read that's in this space that I'm talking to, these creative leaders that are struggling to figure out how to organize their business, is Rocket Fuel. It's the book in the EOS series that basically talks about the relationship between the visionary and the integrator. And I can't say how many people I've said, read the first 3 chapters of this book. And once you've read the first 3 chapters of this book, you get to decide what happens next. It'll either resonate with you or it won't. But for me, it was life-changing.
Yeah, love it. And I actually did an interview. Check out the one I did with Mark Winters, who's the co-author. And I also did an interview with Gino Wickman, who authored that and Traction. So check those out as well. Love that. And I think they have a quiz somewhere, Craig. I did take it at some point, which is like they rank how much are you visionary and how much are you integrator? And most of the people out there, at least in the CEOs, are visionaries. So and hence you coming as an integrator is very valuable. And they even say in there, it's less common in that position to be more integrator than visionary.
Yeah. So it is great to have a good vision or a good integrator backing you up.
Check it out. Go to craigswanson.org, learn more. And Craig, thanks. And thanks, everyone.
Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.